Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast, where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever. Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective, and this is my co-host Shannon Calorie, the head practitioner for our practice. Welcome.
Yeah, hi. Happy Thursday. That's when we're recording this, and it's Lionsgate Portal. So yeah, happy Lionsgate Portal. I know Megan and I are both feeling it a little bit.
We are feeling the strong energy shifts going on. We were just talking about this before we started recording, and just like the differences in energies with our physical bodies and energetic bodies. And for me, in this week, if you're not super up to date or don't follow this stuff, so today's like a really big energetic portal. And then earlier this week, there was also a new moon, and then we also went into Mercury retrograde. So things are just like, there's a lot of shifts, and like I've personally felt it. I've gone through a lot of emotions and just a lot of processing, random things coming up all of a sudden for me. And I feel like today there's a big shift. And often for me, when there's a big shift, my physical body's like, okay, now we need extra sleep because we just processed all this stuff energetically. And now it's time to rest so that we can integrate. And this is super common for people who are more energetically in tune and do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm also experiencing those things. It actually hit like earlier, more around the new moon for me when I started to get that like extreme tiredness and kind of same. My partner Rob is not like super into energy stuff, but he also had some really big stuff come up throughout the thing. So both doing a lot of processing and whatnot. And I've had a handful of clients too who just, having like maybe some flare-ups if you're doing physical work around this time is pretty common. I'm hearing a lot about passing like big parasites and stuff. So it's always interesting to chat with people and see like what's coming up for them around this time.
Yeah, and even if you're not super into this, a lot of people are really connected and just don't know it, which is it's really fascinating when that happens to you. And I was this way, and so I resonate so much with this of just not understanding. And then as you start to learn more about this and start to get more connected with yourself, your own energies, and you realize everything that's going on and how much everything is so interconnected and how sometimes sensitive you can be. And I know, and this kind of goes along with our topic that we're going to talk about today about like getting stuck and what to do, when supplements and protocols and elimination diets like stop working. But I have a lot of people who we have a lot of people who, especially towards the end of their work with us, this bigger work, they're really sensitive to energies and are just really sensitive to a lot of things. For me, a few weeks ago, I went to Lake Michigan. I went to the beach on a Saturday, and it was super crowded. It was a beautiful day. And I felt a shift in my energy immediately just being around that many people. And, for me, I'm very well aware that this happens, but it can be a little alarming for people being like, I thought this was going to change. I thought, that this wasn't going to happen anymore. And I could be a quote unquote normal person again. And I mean, quote unquote normal people are mostly out of tune with their bodies, with their energies, with how they're feeling. And, I think a lot of people just don't feel good most of the time when they're so disconnected. And so when we do connect, we realize how different things impact us and realize how sensitive we actually are. And that can be overwhelming at first. And it's a huge strength, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it is a massive strength when you actually learn how to tune into it and use it. And especially when I'm just going to roll right into what we're talking about today because this fits perfectly. So, when you are a person who you maybe don't know how connect with that side of yourself yet. We do work with, I would say, a handful of people who, it's 50-50. We get people who are super in tune with themselves, and then people who they have it, but they just don't know how to use it yet. And oftentimes those are the people that they can go through a protocol and make it all the way through, and maybe are still struggling a bit at the end with whether that be certain physical symptoms, like, maybe some GI stuff or like sleep issues, whatever that may be. Those are typically the people that need to make that shift and kind of tune in and tap into their body more, maybe whether that be like dealing with some old trauma stuff, learning how to manage stress better. But it's usually the people who are avoiding that part who get, at the end of a protocol, and maybe we're still dealing with some of that stuff. Like, that is usually the missing piece, is like learning how to tap into that side and like get comfortable with what feels super uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think before we dive in deeper, we need to make a couple discernments here. So, Shane and I have both experienced this, and I feel like shared quite a bit about this. And there is a difference between being symptom managed and not seeing the results long term after protocols, after restrictive diets, and addressing bigger root causes and still having issues and getting stuck in that sense. So, I mean, like for me, really classic example is with cortisol. I did every protocol, legitimately every protocol under the sun, some of the most comprehensive, like high level types protocols that are available and just out there. And I still had, and they would work during the protocol, and maybe a couple weeks, I don't think a couple months, a couple weeks after the protocol ended, I would still see those results. And then I'd go right back. And once again, for us, and you can always go back and listen to our high cortisol episodes and where we dive deeper into this, but you know, cortisol issues are often a symptom, and we need to look at bigger stresses inside and outside of the body. And at this point in time, no one had talked to me or addressed heavy metals or parasites or the Epstein-Barr virus for that matter at that point in time. And no one had brought up trauma healing, the value of nervous system regulation. This was before I really got into that side of things. And, for me, looking back, of course, none of these protocols for cortisol, proper cortisol regulation, were going to work long term because my stress bucket was still too high, both internally and externally, that I was never going to stay regulated.
Mm-hmm. And oh, go ahead.
Oh,
More?
no,
Okay.
you can go ahead.
Um, yeah, and no one, and that's the thing, like, it's a very similar experience, and no one tells you that. And I feel like it's super important for us now as practitioners helping people which we do our best to be upfront with people about this. Like, for me, it was like just constantly for years targeting SIBO and like Candida. I swear that's what everyone went after when we were trying to work on healing me and all the things. And I had one practitioner, one out of like this 10 years of a time frame, say, you have like your adrenals need some support, you've got some cortisol stuff going on, you should really look at like stress. But she didn't necessarily know how to guide me through that. But I do remember one person bringing that up to me, and I was like, it was like a throw your hands in the air moment. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know how to do this. No one said this before. Like, I don't understand what you're saying. And now looking back on that, I was like, oh my God, like if I would have just like followed with that or like hung on to that and whatnot, these protocols probably would have helped a little bit more than they did. I still was missing like the huge root issue, which was mold for me. But, bottom line is no matter how much work you do with supplements, if you're not getting that nervous system portion, like you're not getting the whole picture there.
Yeah, exactly. And same thing I think about restrictive diets. I was on restrictive diets, elimination diets for years and years and years because of the gut issues. And that's the go-to of let's just starve everything. Let's try and remove all every potential inflammatory food that could exist. And yeah, I mean, I got down to chicken, steak, and white rice. And those are the only things I could eat without having significant reactions, which is not good, is not healthy physically, missing a lot of great nutrients, just eating those three items. And I mean, talk about food fear and just
Ugh.
anxiety going in. Every single meal, just having extreme anxiety about, okay, am I going to react? Okay, well, I have this to do later. What if I do have a reaction? Like, what if I am crazy bloated and I'm in a lot of pain? What if my back flares? What if any of these things happen? And having that, I mean, I could have eaten anything at that point, and going in with that level of anxiety and stress, I would have reacted anyways. And so this is a big reason why, once again, you can go back to our episode on eating disorders, disordered eating, and we dive deeper into that restrictive diet piece. And this is a huge reason why we're not massive fans of elimination diets, restrictive dieting. And they do have a time and a place for sure with certain things. For us, we'll largely use it for if someone is having crazy flares with mold and mast cell issues. Yeah, going on a lower histamine or lower oxalate diet, and keep in mind I said lower
Yeah.
histamine and a lower oxalate diet, not a low histamine and low oxalate diet, because those are very restrictive, very, very, very restrictive diet. That, yeah, it can help temporarily and manage your symptoms so that you can feel a little bit better, so that you can get stress under control, so that you can, kind of get through as we're doing this bigger work. And at the end of the day, if you're on these restrictive diets forever, I mean, that's not gonna fix you. you're
No.
you're not gonna heal.
Yeah, and as soon as you go to eat something again that you normally don't eat, you're probably going to have so much fear internally around it that you're going to have a reaction no matter what. And honestly, most of the time with our clients, we are working on trying to get people to eat more food because it's such a big, we do work with a lot of female clients, and we work with males too, and it's not only for, this isn't only a female thing, it's also a male thing, but just like not eating enough food or not enough of the right food, because I think it is pretty common for, just like with society, diet culture, whatever you want to call it, um, not eating enough protein, specifically females like being maybe afraid to get like bulky and whatnot when there's already other issues like food fear, body image stuff going on in the first place. So, yeah, most of the time we're actually working to try and get people to incorporate more food in their diet. So it just the approach of trying to remove more things is typically always going to be more stressful. So we really try and not utilize that unless it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we think about something like SIBO, so with SIBO, which symptom, not a root cause. So if you're only addressing SIBO, yet you're also not going to heal. You can, once again, I've taken every supplement under the sun to try and kill SIBO, and it always came back. And a low FODMAP diet is often recommended with SIBO because you're starving the bacteria, but then, the bacteria can go hide, and then biofilm disruptors. And it's just a whole cycle. Plus, like, what is feeding the SIBO in the first place? How and why did it get there? What are your stomach acid levels doing? Toxin overload. A lot of pieces here that are overlooked by and large, I think, especially with gut issues, gut overgrowth issues, and only looking at the gut and only doing killing protocols and or jumping right into killing protocols. But a low FODMAP diet, I mean, it's pretty terrible.
Mhm.
And just because you eliminate those foods, I mean, gosh, I didn't eat garlic and onions for years, and I cook almost all of my meals with garlic and onions. And so that's a huge, I mean, that was huge for me, those two foods in particular. And I had high reactivity to those in particular. And yeah, I mean, just the amount of stress that came around with that too, of trying to be that restrictive and what can I eat? How do I live a life? how do I go out to eat? How do I go out to dinner with friends? I was already like, all right, well, we can't drink. So can we go out to eat any sort of food? Do I have to eat all of my food beforehand? And then I just sit there with my lovely glass of water,
Mhm.
hanging out, which is not fun. No one wants to be that person. And so, yeah, it's just more stressful. And so once again, what do we do when we get stuck with supplements, stuck with these various protocols? A couple of things we need to think about. One, have we been symptom managed? I think is a really, really big one, because I do see this mistake happen so, so, so often. And then once again, Shannon and I have experienced this with almost all of our practitioners that we
Yeah.
worked with, and just being symptom managed, which yeah, you're not going to heal if you're just like band-aiding all these bunches of symptoms and not looking at the whole picture altogether.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking about how many big practices, and I know you experienced this, big name people that you worked with who are just chasing symptoms, and it was just like a light bulb moment, like, wow, I don't know how people are doing it right now, but yeah, so when we do get to a point in a protocol where we kind of feel like maybe we're looping or going in circles, or just finding different supplements to throw at things. And people also get to a point internally where you're just exhausted. You're done. You don't want to take supplements anymore. And, we totally get that. We've been there. And there sometimes does come a point in time when that happens. And again, that is usually when you need to dive into maybe some stuff that feels a little bit more uncomfortable, like the trauma piece, or just working to help regulate your nervous system a little more. And a really good starting point for this is probably any type of energy work, hands down, or even just like a therapist of some sort. I mean, you've heard us talk about EMDR therapy before, that's very trauma specific, but even talk therapy, like if you're someone who isn't comfortable with any of that stuff, that is a good starting point, because things are going to come up. It's going to bring up emotions, and just having someone to hold the space for you and be able to talk about it is going to be really helpful. And normally, what we see happens at that point when people start to do that is they start to get those breakthroughs that they kind of didn't experience throughout the protocol.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'll say, just because I've had a lot of life changes this year, with everything, feel free to go back and listen to previous episodes if you want to know more about that. I will share. There's a couple things that I think are valuable to share, in this episode in particular. But, I went back to therapy, and I haven't been to therapy in a while. I mean, it's been nine, maybe 10 years since I've been to therapy, talk therapy. And I knew as soon as, the decision was made to like go through separation, to sell the house, like to leave, that, hey, I need someone to talk to on a regular basis, to be able to hold the space, to be able to help me process when I went down into, loops and spirals, which, even with all the amount of work that I've done, yes, that still happens occasionally.
Mhm.
I can get myself out a little bit faster than I way faster than I used to be able to, and it doesn't last as long. And I also knew the value of bringing in that outside help, and I think that is a great option as a starting point to go back to work on something new. I do think there is a valuable distinction of, for me, she was not a trauma therapist, and I knew that going into it. And I was very clear about my expectations and what I was looking for, and made sure it was a good fit on both sides. And that's super, super important. I did get lucky, in the first therapist that I had reached out to was a good fit, which is very fortunate and definitely does not always happen. So you may have to interview several. And, just be clear about expectations, your expectations and their expectations and their capacity, that, regular talk therapy is not there to release the trauma from your body. You know, like if we think about somatic type work, that's not typically what they are trained in unless they have additional training. They are not trained in how to retrain your brain and rewire these default programs. And they can hold space. They can reflect back to you. They can help you become more aware and almost call you out on some of the things
Mhm.
that are going on, and reflections and make suggestions. You know, my therapist gave me a lot of suggestions for, you know, things to journal about or things that came up or just, you know, something else to think about that I found super, super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I also went back to therapy. I actually just started. I've only had 3 sessions, but same thing, you know, like I very much so know how to pull myself out much quicker than I used to when something happens or when I'm processing something. But as you've heard us talk about before, you know, with microdosing, it's easier for things to come up and to, you know, kind of like stand right in front of your face and be like, hey, like this is what you need to work on right now. And sometimes it's hard to do that by yourself. So just having that team of people around you, kind of helping like guide you, pull it out of you, give you some direction and whatnot is incredibly useful. And it's not like, and I know that that can feel uncomfortable too. There are, you know, there's a stigma around therapy for sure, and just around like digging deeper, you know, into the emotional side of things and whatnot too. And that can be uncomfortable when you're not someone who's used to that. But surely when you've done something like a big protocol, like working on mold or other chronic issues, if you put in the time and effort to get that far and go through that, it is definitely worth spending the time and effort kind of exploring the emotional side of things too.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember, you know, for me, when I last worked with my last practitioner, you know, it was a big decision to break up with this person and stop. I mean, I stopped all supplements. I was just, it had been years at this point of just protocol after protocol, and you know, with this last person of, it was so much like big parasite work, which yes was helpful. It was, I I don't, you know, I don't agree with what I know now. I don't agree with what we did and how long we did it. We also didn't even talk about, you know, rebuilding and healing and sealing the gut lining. I did that after the fact, after I gave my body a break from supplements and any sort of restrictive dieting. Although I don't, you know, for me, I don't eat gluten. I largely don't eat dairy. I shouldn't eat eggs. I don't respond well to them. They have snuck back into my diet here recently because they're super delicious and I love them. And my skin is screaming at me to stop eating the eggs, and I will at some point. And but you know, for me, like gluten was a hard and fast no to keep out. But sorry, I digress here. So going back, so I stopped everything, and shortly after that, I got certified as I got my Reiki attunement, Reiki level 1, level 2, and I had been off supplements for a little while before I went through that, and then I passed a big parasite. And yeah, I mean, it was really interesting for me, kind of starting that and then getting into the plant medicine space and seeing how much of a difference in, especially for me, sleep, energy, kind of bloating. And not that those were major issues for me, but they were still there. They were still lingering. And I'll say the sleep is a little, you know, it's a little wishy-washy sometimes. And there largely that is energetically related. And I'm aware of that. And there's also shifts and changes and a bunch of other stuff that I'm not quite ready to share, but we'll share at some point in the near-ish future and chat more about that. But yeah, I mean, it was just really interesting to see without supplements, without these restricted protocols, how my body was changing and how I was feeling differently and feeling better And then for me to go through this Reiki attunement and then pass a parasite and feel a massive sense of relief. And then for me to take a week to recover from that as well, and really get my energy back. And then going into journey spaces and seeing how much healing can be done, for me through all of my journey experiences, particularly, obviously the most intense being the one I most recently went through in March with ayahuasca and Wachuma and that space. And yeah, I mean, yes, I think supplements and nutrition and lifestyle, like all of these things are important. And if you're not going to do this piece, just be aware that there are limitations. And as Shannon has said a few times now, it is not comfortable a lot of the time. And I know that can be really challenging for people. And I'm gonna pause there before I bring up my next topic in case Shannon has something she would like to expand upon because I was just talking there for a while.
No, I mean, nothing major to add, just I just want to stress how important this piece is, which is why we're literally doing a whole podcast episode about it. Just like it taking the time to maybe even like slow down, of course, like if you're on a protocol, completing it, but if you are a person who's like stuck and not getting anywhere, like just taking a pause, checking in with yourself, and maybe reaching out for some extra emotional support in different direction could be a really great next step for you.
Yeah, and just kind of going off of that, and once again, this is a little bit fresh for me, and I've also gone through this in different ways. And that's relationships, and the people that you surround yourself with as you're going through these protocols. And one of the things that we'll often see as people start to heal, and especially nervous system regulation, and doing this deeper emotional, potentially energetic healing, trauma healing, is people can start to fall away a little bit, which can be very lonely and very isolating. Friendships maybe don't resonate as much. Maybe things around family, you're setting some stronger boundaries. Maybe there's some conflict there, and that has been present for me for forever. I started setting really strong boundaries in college with family members that only got more strict, especially as I started my healing journey. I mean, I set some really, really, really strong boundaries with my family, and so that just left me pretty isolated from family, which I still firmly stand behind. And I absolutely needed that at that time and was a really, really good choice. And yeah, I mean, I lost a lot of my, I'll say most of my friendships fell away once I was in this car accident, stopped drinking, stopped being able to do like a lot of these things. And it was very lonely and very isolating. And being able to find now, and this has been several years ago at this point, but being able to find new friendships and friendships that revolved around, other people doing the work, other people trying to heal, that's also really healing for me. And I think there's a lot of healing that I've gotten, once again, that I don't think there's no supplement, there's no diet that could have done this for me. In that being able to surround myself with support and just people who were on similar paths that we can talk about these things, and for me, a lot of my friends, many of my friends are older women, and being able to hear stories about like perimenopause and menopause, and obviously I have formal education around this, and some of them do as well, and but we're all on this healing journey, and there's a lot of value in that, and it also took a while to find those
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up because that is something worth noting, and it'll go either way, where, like Megan said, people, and I'm certain that for almost everyone, once you get into the deeper work, it is very common that you will have some people fall away out of your life, or you're going to have people who see you and honor you in what you're doing, and they're able to support you through that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing the exact same things or even changing their own lifestyle, but they're able to kind of like stick with you on that journey and maybe support you in a different way and just like accept you for changing and who you are. So I mean, I also had that happen. I had some friends fall away. I do feel very thankful. I have a group of girls that I've known since like grade school, and we have been through so many ups and downs together, and it was not always good. But now, we're all in our 30s now, and just looking back and being like, wow, we were able to all adjust and grow into adults and somehow like all still like be there for each other and accept like the new versions of ourselves. That's pretty cool. So it's very different for everyone, especially in relationships with partners. When you start to do the work, things change, things become more eye-opening to one another. And it's kind of like, you can't force your partner to dive in and be on the same page as you and want to do all the things. But it is important to, make sure someone is able to continue growing with you, even though it may not be in the exact same way. That's kind of what happened with like my partner, Rob, and I, and I'm not going to share too much, but I've been on this deep, deep healing journey for like 3 years now at this point, really intense over the last 2 years. And, things were not on the same level when they first started out, but now we're catching up and things are happening, things are working out. He's dealing with his own like realizations and working on his own stuff. So it's not to say that everyone's going to fall away from you, but there will be shifts when this type of work happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it was really funny. And certainly, we see this in the plant medicine space. And when I first got in the plant medicine space, I journeyed mostly in women's groups and still have journeyed mostly in women's groups. I've done a couple co-ed things here. And, looking at a lot of, especially the facilitators and a lot of their friends, all divorced. And when I first got into it, I was in the space, I was doing deeper healing, and I still didn't quite understand, and I think for me, there was some judgment on my part. And I think that was a reflection on me, not onto them. It was me holding on to some traumas for myself, and I think some fears for myself, but looking at them in their situations, and a lot of them were pretty happily divorced, meaning that they had good relationships with their former partners and just in really good places with their lives. And I didn't quite understand. And as I talked to them more and learned more, and understanding this dichotomy of, yeah, when you start doing the work, that shift, that gap starts to expand. And if for them, like a lot of their life work is around this, and I feel it very, very similarly to this, and that part of my life's work is doing this really deep work. I have no intention of getting out of the plant medicine space and not continuing to do like deeper work. And I think there can be a lot of shifts and changes in what that looks like and how that looks. And if your partner is not close, coming up behind you, this presents a lot of challenges. And this is how, this is how I ended up. And this played a big role in the situation that I'm currently in, and in some of my decisions, from this year, knowing that it was going to be best. And it has been, especially since I've been in Michigan here since the end of June, just a deeper sense of healing. And once again, it's still pretty fresh and not quite open to sharing all of this and what this looks like. I will be at some point. I'm getting close. And yeah, I mean, just a deeper level of healing, a deeper level of safety in my
Mm.
body, and even stress. I was sharing this with one of my friends, not too long ago. Like, stress feels different to me now. Stress used to be, I could feel it through my whole body. I would still get like some like looping anxiety type things coming up. I actually don't feel stress largely in my body. And it just like, it doesn't show up because my body feels so safe and so regulated in a way that, I mean, I have zero memories of ever physically feeling this way. And to be able to reach that point, there, once again, there's no supplement, there's no protocol, there's no elimination diet. Like, there's nothing that could have gotten me into this place of feeling this way other than working on trauma, making some decisions, making very challenging, seemingly not popular decisions among certain people or groups, and even among myself several years ago. I probably would have judged myself for the decisions that I have made, and being able to feel the way I feel, this level of safety and relaxation and comfort and connectedness is just the result of years of this work, and then kind of these big decisions that happened that all of a sudden felt like I had to make and were very necessary, and I obviously were the right decision for me. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's nothing else.
Yeah, and that's just it, is supplements didn't do that. You did. And I can easily say the same thing. Like even working through mold, of course I felt different after that. Of course my body felt different. I felt better, but there was still things that I wasn't able to shift, that I had to dig down deeper and address those certain traumas in the way that I responded to things, in regulating my own nervous system. Like those were things that had to be done separately, that did not involve supplements, in order to get over that hump and feel that safety, like you said, and feel less anxious and be able to sleep without sleeping medication. And the list goes on and on. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, is like there just comes to a point where supplementation isn't going to get you where you desire to go.
Exactly. And I want to also be really clear that it wasn't the plant medicine that did this.
Oh yeah.
Yes, it was a tool and gave me some insight. And, I think there was, especially on the ayahuasca journeys with the physicality of my journey, there was a lot of somatic work. There was a lot of traumas, a lot of emotions that were able to be released. And once again, all the preparation and years of work that, led up to that, it was like that culmination. And there was insights and being able to tap into myself, my intuition, and there were signs there. I mean, none of this was like out of the blue necessarily. None of my friends were surprised, different things like this. So, other people around me were not surprised. I think I was surprised because I was in denial and avoiding, some of these things that were very clearly in front of me that other people saw. And yeah, so I just wanted to make that clarification that if you're thinking, oh, the plant medicine did it. No, the plant medicine did not do this. And it was a tool just to give me some insight. And I also had a choice. I could have chosen to stay exactly where I was. And I had some insights into what that would feel like, and it did not feel good, which is why I chose not to make those decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call out on that too. Cause I think people, it's kind of the same concept as like a magic pill or a supplement. Like for plant medicine specifically, yes, it can help with like rewiring the brain and helping you kind of like think and maybe feel in a new way. But ultimately, you and your body, you're the one doing the work to process that. And it's not only happening while you take it, you're going to be doing a lot more work outside of that.
Yeah, and if you are not doing the work outside of it, look, you're not going to get the benefits. I've been in these spaces enough. I've been around enough people over periods of time who keep believing that these plants are the answer, and they're not. They can be a valuable tool. I'm not saying they aren't. And if you're not doing the integration, if you're not doing other work, other deeper dives like connection work, journaling, whatever it is, whatever resonates with you at that time, you're not going to see the big shifts that maybe you want. And the big shifts, sometimes for me, like, they happen all at once. Sometimes it's a slow roll here, for probably a year and a half, they were a pretty slow roll. And then, all of a sudden for me, it was like things were ready, and it was like massive shifts. And so also don't expect massive shifts right off the bat. I did my first journey. Once again, I had been doing work for years before I went even into my first journey. I had been microdosing for several months. There was just a lot that went into that to make some of these shifts and changes possible and accelerated with the aid of plants.
Yeah, and your body does have to be ready for it too. So in that kind of looping back to doing some of the deeper work around toxins and whatnot, that's why we like to start with that. I mean, no harm in maybe starting at the same time, but still removing those toxins from your body and whatnot and doing the rebalancing, making sure you're able to digest food properly and actually get the nutrients and the benefits from it. Those things are going to help set you up to do the emotional work even better. So that, that is an important piece. We're not saying, of course, we're not saying that there's no use for supplements and whatnot, because there definitely is, but just maybe not for the rest of your life.
Yeah, exactly. And for us, for me, like I take a multivitamin.
Mhm.
Sometimes I take a digestive enzyme. I like mushrooms, so I'll do like lion's mane and reishi are pretty in my wheelhouse right now. My blood test most recently, I tested low for magnesium, so I'm back on magnesium. I've also been under a lot of stress this year, so understandably, my magnesium has been a little bit low. I also had the iron oversaturation slightly, so that can deplete nutrients like magnesium as well. And so, yeah, I mean, here's really the moral of the story. Everything matters. It all matters, and doing just a piece of this often doesn't work. And I talked a little bit about this in our 5 pillars episode, the solo episode that I did of there's a reason why we have these 5 pillars, and they are non-negotiables for us because we've been through it. We've tried to just use the supplements or nutrition or the lifestyle or the nervous system regulation piece, and they all really come together. And if we think about we're obsessed with the liver and toxins and toxin overload and supporting the liver. Well, guess what? When you also do this work, your liver is also filtering out emotions and energies. And, the more energetic work that I do on weeks where I'm doing, multiple energy healing sessions, and that is a lot of my time, you better believe my liver support goes way up during that time because there's so much that the liver has to process. And we think about physical things and there's also a lot of emotions and traumas and energies. If we look at like the energetic body and emotions and organs and where things are stored, the liver hangs on to anger and resentment. You know, let's just think about most of our childhoods and relationships in our
Yeah.
life right now. Most of us are going to hold on to some form of anger and resentment somewhere in our lives. Not saying everyone, but probably the vast majority of us. So why would we also not need to support the liver and taking stress off the liver and balancing blood sugar, whether that's through nutrition, through supplements, and looking at all of these things. That's why all of this really goes together. And this piece is also the piece that is often not taken very seriously, which is where we see so many people getting stuck in just trying to out supplement, out elimination diet, out restrictive diet, their health protocols.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the liver specifically is such a big piece to this too. And is what's crazy is, I mean, there's charts you can look up online. God, I had one in the top of my head. I think it's if you look up like metaphysical body chart, or even just like where do we store emotions in the body, something will come up online and it'll talk about like where we hold different emotions in the body. But what's really interesting is like, you know, if you don't believe in this and you have some big emotional event that comes up, maybe you're having trouble sleeping, and then say you add in some liver support and you start to sleep better and whatnot. It's just crazy how, for me, like when I have like a big therapy session or something comes up during like craniosacral therapy, my body will not want to sleep at night. But as soon as I add in something like a castor oil pack to give myself that extra support, I go back to sleep just fine. So, I mean, it's a real thing, look it up, do some research on it. But yeah, the liver is a really big piece to this as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, and once again, if we look at long-term maintenance, one of the biggest things that we recommend is continued liver support. And that doesn't have to look the same as it did, in the middle of a protocol, but some form of liver support on a somewhat regular basis. I'd say at least once a week, once or twice a week. There is so much value in that. The other piece that we always recommend is nervous system regulation. Once again, if we just look at this stress bucket, the more we can take out of this bucket, the more room and flexibility you have throughout the rest of your life. And we all go through stressful periods of time. Things happen, situations are going to come up. And if your nervous system, the more regulated your nervous system is, just the more room you have in that bucket, and the less likely that you're going to have a flare of your chronic viral issues, of your gut issues, of cortisol imbalances or dysregulation. And so this is why setting yourself up for success really comes down to, all right, well, what can we eliminate out of that bucket? And how can we continue to lower what's in that bucket? And this is where a lot of the deeper work comes in. And once again, for me, I felt like my bucket's been fairly low for several years, and it continues to get lower, and I continuously get surprised at how I feel, and the health benefits of it, the cognitive benefits, emotional benefit, all of these benefits that I get from this. And it's just, I mean, it's really incredible to think about, even just where I was 2 or 3 years ago versus where I am now, and thinking I was in a good spot. And all right, well, where am
Right?
I
Yeah.
now? Yeah, like I'm in an amazing spot. Where am I going to be in another 2 to 5 years? Like, I can't wait.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, though, is like that's what's exciting is once you start doing it and you even if you feel like the slightest bit better or see the smallest change, you're like, oh my God, like I never knew I could feel this relaxed. Like I didn't understand that I was anxious all the time. And then you keep going, and like Megan said, you look back and you're like, wow, like I was there and I thought I felt good, and now I'm here. Like, how much farther can I get? And it's never gonna be like perfect by any means because of course we always have stressors that come up in life, but there's not really a good way to explain it. It's just when you keep doing the work and you keep diving in, it really just keeps getting better. It's not always easy, but the end result is always better.
Yeah, and once again, and I think we talked about this probably in the nervous system regulation, it is like a wave. It's like riding this wave. I think of this week. Monday I felt super good. Tuesday, really challenging. Wednesday, pretty challenging. Today, energetically super good. Physically pretty tired. But like that wave goes really fast now. And I'm not feeling that like really low energy, like I'm struggling with everything for weeks or months or years like it used to be. Now it's a couple days. And also understanding, yeah, we had a new moon, Mercury went into retrograde, and we have the Lionsgate portal today. And I'm still, there's a lot of like shifts that are happening, with my next move, like all of this stuff that's coming up, like, of course. Yeah, but it's being able to be processed fast. I'm also making sure to take the time
Yes.
to do that physically, mentally, and emotionally. Baths have been my best friend the last 2 weeks. So, all of these things play a big role.
Yeah, and that's if there's one thing like that you could even start with, I would say that's it. What you just said, being able to kind of like train yourself to take a step back and like bird's eye view, like what's going on in my life right now, and why, if you're really anxious or feeling overwhelmed, like stop and take a step back and be like, maybe you have kids, you have a full-time job, like whatever it may be, a family member passed away, like who knows, but just being able to remove yourself and kind of like step back and give yourself a break, that not a lot of people know how to do that, and that is a very helpful tool, and it can definitely help you along your journey. And I mean, you'll be pretty successful in handling emotions and processing things if you're even able to do that one thing.
Yeah, and this is a huge reason why we recommend starting with like 3 to 5 minutes of some sort of mindfulness activity daily, whether that's meditation, breath work, somatic work, journaling. And it's about being super consistent with it right off the bat, even when things not be that hard. Because here's the thing, when things do get hard, that's usually for most people, and I'm also guilty of this, so I'm not like shaming anyone. I
Same.
understand. Yeah. That when you get stressed, that's usually the first thing to go. And that is also when it's the most important to keep doing. And if it's a regular part of your day, of just a routine, a habit, the more likely it is going to be able to stay in there, so that you can take this step back, that you still have this opportunity to connect, to maybe take that bird's eye view of what's going on, what the situation is, and all that kind of stuff, so that you are not trapped in like the bottom of these waves that happen for too long. And if you are being able to step back and be like, this is where I am right now, this is okay, it can be hard right now, I can do hard things, and this is not going to be forever.
Yeah, I love that saying, I can do hard things.
Yeah.
I used that a lot when I was first starting out in this work. Was the I can do hard things. I remember saying that to myself all the time. That's a good one. But yeah, I mean, it's a really useful tool to add in that small, even if it's small, like a minute, 2 minutes, whatever, just adding it in and being consistent with it. It's going to be really helpful, especially when something big comes up. You're just setting yourself up to pretty much be able to help your body work through it.
Exactly. So if you feel stuck, hopefully this helps. If you have currently feeling stuck, if you have felt stuck, hopefully this episode will just give you some insight and know that you don't have to be stuck. And maybe there's some other areas to look at, maybe bigger picture, maybe you have been symptom managed, and maybe you're coming to realize that, look, there's no shame in that. We all were for many, many years, until we figured this out a little bit differently. And maybe you haven't been symptom managed, and maybe this nervous system, trauma healing, deeper connection with yourself is the next step. And we have a lot of resources to be able to help with that. There are just a ton of resources in general. You can definitely follow us on social media. Especially around the nervous system regulation piece, I do try and provide quite a bit. We have other podcast episodes, so go check those out. But you are not alone. You don't have to be stuck forever. It's okay. We've been there and we've gotten unstuck, and so can you.
Yeah, you can come out of it. It might feel a little uncomfortable, and it might take a little bit more time than you expected, maybe some things that you weren't planning on, but if we can do it, you can do it too.
Yes, absolutely. We just have a lot of tools, and we've built those tools over the years, and we started in similar places as you. So yes, you can do it. If we can do it, you can do it 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for listening and joining us. As always, we would love it if you subscribe, follow, whatever it is, wherever you are listening, do that. One of those, whatever that is. And 5-star reviews mean a ton to us. So if it resonates, we would love a 5-star review. Once again, it really, really means a lot to us. Thanks so much for joining, and be sure to join us next time.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.